We have to talk about the visual directing and the visual symbolism in this incredible 86 episode. The first shot that I just showed there shows a bunch of ants devouring a dead insect. It looked like a butterfly to me. And what I love about that is you're not exactly sure what to make of that. Is the 86 the little ants devouring its giant prey, that being the morpho and everything like that? Or is it a reverse? Are the little ants actually all the legion that we aren't able to deal with because there's so many of them, and if they have the numbers, they can easily overwhelm even a very powerful force like Shin and company? And then as Shin's talking about just how he doesn't see himself as alive and feeling dead, you get to see the dead body and there's just crumbs left and the ants are gone, making me feel like, oh man, without a doubt, the ants were the Legion. But then you see this shot here where it's, oh my god, the butterflies, these like Legion animatronic butterflies, are flying around a giant winged creature. The winged creature that was being eaten, without a doubt, had to be symbolizing the Morpho's downfall, so the ants must have been Shin and Kurna and all the others. But it doesn't mean the ants will make it out either. So it feels like, despite having all this amazing visual symbolism and really getting inside Shin's psyche more, they're really establishing that there is no damn way whatsoever to predict if all of these characters will come out of this one alive, and that's pretty damn frightening. Shin in this episode has one of his biggest heart-to-heart moments with, honestly, best girl Frederica at this point. She literally got him to open up. He doesn't feel alive. He feels dead. Ever since that cliffside where he was going off to die, he really doesn't feel like he doesn't want anything. He doesn't want a future. He doesn't want to see the ocean. And he firmly is convinced that he'll one day be left. That the people who stick by him, they won't be around forever and they will leave him, whether through death or they willingly decide to leave the Reaper behind. It's very lonely. He has a very lonely and grim look at his future because the PTSD of war and what shaped him, he doesn't feel like a human because of everything that's happened. And we can tell that his mind's been cracking more and more, and honestly, he's needed Lena more than ever in recent episodes. And it's unfortunate that it's basically established in the anime that her entire country was obliterated. I'm still thinking she will pop up at some point, but I mean, for narrative purposes, they've established her as dead and the characters are firmly convinced, which further pushes him in such a lonely lifestyle because the first person he really was opening up to is a person that he needs now more than ever that he firmly believes is dead. But there's so many great moments throughout this episode that really establishes how lonely Shin thinks he is, but for the viewer watching, we realize it's the opposite. Look at the commanding forces and everyone that Shin has told to run away and flee. They're not doing that. They're sticking by. They make some funny remarks about how if they would have left and went drinking and those kids came back home after destroying a giant insect, they would have made fun of us forever. The people who we feel like are just using Shin and company as a sword are recognizing that a sword, we want to put the sword to good use, but we don't want that sword to fall into Legion hands, so we want them alive as well. The viewer knows that this army doesn't want the 86 to die. That's been a very common trend for some time, even if they have some very negative things to say. They don't want these kids to die. And we know damn well Raiden and company would die alongside Shin before ever leaving him behind, and would gladly give their life for him, not because he's the Reaper, but because he's their family. But Shin is so warped because of everything that he's been through, and the more, I mean, it's no surprise. He hears literally voices of the dead, basically. That would drive anyone insane. The fact that he's held off for so long, I mean, one of the first establishing moments for Shin's character in Core 1 was that he's the person, he's the Reaper who collects the souls of those close to him. That when they are dead in battle or they're begging for their life because they are in so much pain, he's the one who pulls the trigger and he's the one who keeps their memories on. He is haunted by the dead because he himself feels like a Grim Reaper. And it's pretty sad, it really is, and I have no idea if it's possible to save his psyche, and that's something you don't get to say too often when it comes to a main character in a show, especially a military story. Because typically things work out for some time, and if they don't, it's typically near the end game of a show when it really gets this bad. And this is just the beginning of a show, and the fact that he's this far gone, it's hard to say if he's ever going to come back. Really, at this point, it only feels like the one person who could save him would be Lena, and hopefully she is still around and can pull him out of this darkness. But I mean, it really does feel like he always plans to survive his missions, but there's just because there's more battles. if it got to the point that there was literally no battles and he was sitting there seeing a future bright of possibilities, I'm firmly convinced he would take his life at that point, because there would be nothing for him at that point. He feels like a ghost, and that's all he believes in. There's a lot of great visual directing that really encapsulates how prisoned he feels. There's this great moment with the chain link fence where it just feels like, rather than a typical ball and chain sort of metaphor, it's really showing how caged in he feels. Or I think my favorite point in the Raiden scene is how Raiden's face you get to see the entire time. He feels like he's hovering over Shin, but when it comes to Shin's dialogue and what he's saying, only get to see from the nose down or the nose up. He always feels like he's smaller than Raiden, and he isn't able to look up because he feels so small in that situation. The visual directing, I mean, this is the type of episode that won't get as much praise visually as the big action piece we saw previously, but it's something just as memorable in my opinion. All the visual cues, from the almost destroyed teddy bear to the chain link fence to the ants eating this insect, it just really goes to show just what we're getting into, and I think that's what makes it so much more impactful. Rather than seeing a gross, decomposing body, we get to see wildlife consume itself and wondering which way of the direction they're gonna go. Is the thing being consumed the 86, or are the 86 the ones consuming its prey? I mean, it's definitely a cliffhanger for sure, but this was one of the most memorable Shin episodes, hands down. His character has been easily, I think, the star of the show for some time, but really seeing how he feels about himself and his future and his lack of life, really getting him to admit it out loud even though the viewers had suspected as much, it hurts all the more. I mean, the cliffhanger definitely establishes that they are about to have bombs away on their homeland there. They are going to be sleeping, probably having missiles come at them, or they're going to just be getting into their bots, which are not in the best of shape, and they're going to be right in the middle of a battlefield. And I'm curious to see how they can get out of that one. I don't know, because it had Shin maybe had a bit more control over his psyche, like what we've seen before, because he's always been a kind of suicidal bastard. That's kind of been his character. But there's a big difference between him now and before. I mean, had Frederica not been on the battlefield when the Morpho did that amazing switch maneuver, Shin would have died there because he was so locked in and he couldn't tell that that wasn't the real one. Only Frederica could, because she could hear the thoughts as well of what's going on there. So it very much feels like Shin in a normal battle right now would get killed. So there has to be something for them to overtake that situation. And I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it has me excited and pretty terrified. Let me know your thoughts and feelings on this week's 86 episode. A lot of great visual symbolism, character dialogue moments. Just let me know what you're feeling down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.